Hey, what's up guys, Rev here. So today we're going to talk about a very important thread that discusses the new Japanese invoice system that went into effect on October 1st. Now, this is something we talked about in a video about a year ago. It was a looming threat back then. Many people did not believe it would come to fruition, but here we are. The system is now active and it has many people rightfully concerned because this invoice system is going to change how all kinds of artists, content creators, and alike will carry on with their professions. It will be a huge financial burden and a huge administrative burden on them. And this thread does a good job covering some of the related concerns and details regarding this invoice system that will impact many of your favorite Japanese content creators, artists, and anime studios as well. So we're going to begin here saying, today might be the beginning of the end, not only for the anime industry, but Japanese entertainment as a whole, as the new invoice system for Japanese consumption tax comes into effect. It has been an issue looming for a few months, and despite the devastating consequences it is bound to have, few people outside of Japan are talking about it. And like I said, I covered this about a year ago in a video. Luckily for me, I came across a long translated thread talking about this invoice system, but back then the concerns that were stemming from that were just looming threats. A lot of people did not believe this invoice system was going to come into effect, but it did. As of October 1st, 2 days prior to this video, it is now live and people have to actually comply with it. So let's keep reading. It says, we would have liked to report about it ourselves earlier, as we have been aware of it for some time, but we wanted to make sure we understand the intricacies and implications of the matter. Now, that is one thing that is important to understand. This is very complicated, and of course, I'm a person on the outside looking in, and I'm doing my best to understand, but it took a lot of research to understand at least the basics of what's going on here, and I'm going to let them do most of the talking because I'm just the authoritative mouthpiece for this story, and I want to share the message because this is very big stuff. So, continuing on, they say it is important to note that the invoice system was thought out mainly as a way to regulate employment and freelancing in construction work, but its implementation has been done with complete disregard for other fields. And speaking of someone who's somewhat familiar with construction, I understand how it might have made sense in that context, but applied to other mediums like, for example, artists, this is a big concern, especially when part of having an invoice is using things like legal names. Well, that's a big problem for artists, vtubers, and anything like that who use pen names or remain anonymous. But moving on, to understand what this new invoice system is about, let's first explain how the Japanese consumption tax worked and how it will change for freelancers. So we click on this for more. Under the old system, all goods were taxed at two rates, 8% and 10% depending on the type of good or service being taxed. Freelancers and small businesses earning less than 10 million yen could claim tax deductions based on their accounting books rather than issuing invoices. This was essential as it allowed individuals to offset the consumption tax based on their expenses. So basically what this is saying, if you made less than 10 million yen per year, you didn't have to worry about these consumption taxes that would come at either 8 or 10%. And I think for the type of people we're talking about in terms of artists and things like that, they get hit with the 10% consumption tax. So basically 10 million yen, I believe that's like 65 to 70-ish thousand US dollars. So that is the threshold that a lot of freelance artists, they don't reach that. So they never had to worry about this extra consumption tax, which is a big deal. 10% of everything you earn getting taxed, that's a big deal. That's a direct 10% cost to everything you're earning. So a lot of small businesses, including small anime studios and alike, have avoided this consumption tax for years because of this threshold, which I also looked into it. That threshold used to be 30 million yen, which is a much higher number, but it was recently reduced down to 10. And still, a lot of people avoided it. But here's another, some more details saying, for example, if a freelancer earned 10 million yen in a year, but half of that was used to cover various business costs, their taxable income would be effectively reduced to 5 million yen, and they would pay a 10% tax on that reduced amount. So that is a relief to people who even did earn more than 10 million yen in a year. And you look at the expenses of your business. I mean, that's something in America we do too. You find certain write-offs and they base your taxes on that final number, deducting the business expenses. Like, for example, if I buy arts, I deduct that from my total earnings that gets taxed on because it was a business expense. And it sounds like that's the same thing here. But carrying on, now with this new invoice system, individuals must use a qualified invoice to claim deductions, making them taxable entities. This introduces additional complexity and administrative burdens to artists who don't have the knowledge or the time to file such documents, and they don't earn enough to hire an accountant who could file it for them. Filing an invoice versus whatever books you have for your business on hand is a completely different thing. You need a qualified professional to do this, which means a cost for the regular people out there in small businesses that they can't afford. Now you have to see someone like a freelance artist who's making much less than the 10 million yen threshold is now going to have to figure out how to do invoices for all of their business transactions, which is a big deal. Now you're probably wondering, well, what if you don't want to get into this invoice system, this whole thing? Well, you can, but the problem is you get taxed differently. And the way it works, from my understanding, is that you'll have to pass on a bigger tax to your customers, meaning they're going to get a bad deal, which means they don't want to work with you if you're not someone who's in the invoice system. But moving on, what's worse, if freelancers don't register as a taxable entity and don't submit qualified invoices, the company paying them will be forced to pay the consumption tax again as a response. That's basically what I just said. It's an extra tax put onto whatever service or good you are selling, and customers are the one who lose in that situation. So either you do the invoices or your customers pay for it, and they're probably going to use your good or service less. It's a lose-lose for everyone. And then down here, this places an undue financial burden on businesses already struggling in the competitive entertainment industry. Moreover, a taxable entity under the new system means your information is made public online, including your real name, raising serious privacy and security concerns. This one is what I focused on when I talked about this whole invoice system about a year ago. That is the main concern, because if you are an artist, you likely use either a pen name or you remain anonymous. And this system, if you're participating in it, will force you to share your legal name attached to your transactions to a publicly available system online. Obviously, that is a huge deal, and that affects people like artists and VTubers as well, which we know the dangers of giving your legal information out there is for online content creators. And given these new costs, these new changes, it's no surprise that in 2 surveys, there was this very dark picture painted here where 20% of voice actors and 20% of animators believe that they will go out of business as a result of this new invoice system. That is a very scary number. 20% believe this change will put them out of business. That's a big deal. And think about what that cost is. The new tax, that's 10% off of everything they're making, and having to provide the invoices, which might require them to either hire a service or have to somehow learn the system and do it themselves, which I think is very unlikely for the average freelance artist or voice actor out there. So this is a big, big cost, and it will affect people. And they're saying that a lot of people within the industry are making tweets referring to the system, basically saying that they're stepping out of the office for today. A lot of people are very, very nervous about this. And there's certain animation studios, they claim, like Mappa, for example, that have raised wages in response to this new invoice law. I don't know if that's like a way to get around the consumption tax. I'm not quite sure how this portion works. Maybe it's like more business expenses or something like that. I'm not quite sure how that whole part works. So if anyone knows, please fill me in the comments section. But smaller businesses may not have the capacity to increase salaries and may be hit hardest by these changes, despite the protests organized by collectives like this group right here. The law is taking effect today, and they were able to get 500,000 signatures for a petition against this new invoice system, which has been ignored by the Prime Minister. And a lot of people are really just losing hope in this whole situation. And for anyone who wants some more information, there's a very good video right here. I'll link the thread in the description if you guys want to check it out. But this video is very helpful for guiding the system. It's an anime styled explanation of this whole new invoice system, and I found it very helpful. But that is the thread. And like I said, I'm just here to spread the message. This is a very serious situation. And yeah, be thinking of your Japanese artists, friends, what have you, because this system will be affecting them. And a lot of people don't know about this in the West. So more videos like my own, spreading the message. Make sure to spread this video because hopefully something is done, because this is a very dire situation for a lot of content creators in Japan. But that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please share all of your thoughts about today's video in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time.